Example, Puerto Rico, you mentioned it. I go into Puerto Rico from New York City, newly married with a newborn baby, beautiful life, everything good. Why would you go to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and take that risk? You're Mr. New York. You know, they're going to give you whatever you want in New York. Why do that? There's two reasons. One, I think the person that always has to have the perfect job, what's my salary, what's my bonus, what's my car, where are you going to put me up, how are you going to remember what a great guy I am? That's one type of employee. And then there's another one that says, I bet these people in important positions are smart enough to realize that if I do something that takes a risk, and I do it in good faith and in service to my company, I bet they'll remember me someday when it comes time for promotion and upward mobility and fulfillment of my dreams. So at that time, people told me, that was a crazy risk. Why do you do this? You blew it, man. You could have been running New York. Why you go for this? So was that a risk? Was that a miss? Maybe, actually. But I go to Puerto Rico, and here's an idea. I have my whole vision and my strategy mapped out in my mind. But I realize, just like meeting Garfield, that I gotta read the room. And the room doesn't want to hear the American with the vision and the strategy dictating the pace to them. They want a humble person that listens to them. So for 2 weeks, I listened to what they want. You know what they told me they want? They want a vision. They want to be inspired when they come to work, and they want their Christmas party back. And then I say to myself, okay, who would perform for you at the Christmas party? What would we wear? Paint the event. Let's dream. Well, it would be Gilbertito Santa Rosa, the #1 salsa singer in Puerto Rico. We would do it at the El San Juan Hotel, the most glorious hotel in Puerto Rico. The men would be in black tie. The women would wear cocktail dresses and beautiful heels, and we'd dance until 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, I come back tomorrow. We talk about it. That night, I hire Gilbertito. I come back the next day to the meeting. Now follow this. This is a risk. Could have been a mistake. I get in front of them. I'm like, I got good news for you. We're going to focus on the customer. That's our vision. I'm putting the water back on the shelves. We're going to start letting you eat again. The other guy cut all the water and all the food out of the equation. God forbid you should be hydrated and have food in you, you know? You might even be more productive. And I'm bringing back the Christmas party. I hired Gilbertito Santa Rosa. Wow! Everybody goes crazy. They're doing Rocky push-ups. Puño, senor, you're the greatest, blah, blah, blah. I take an immediate risk right on the fly there. Some could say a mistake. That room was on fire with excitement. What do? I basically take a risk, I take a chance. I said, no. I know you're happy. We do not wish to dance to Gilbertito or anyone else as the number 64 out of 64 operations in Xerox. We choose to dance as the #1 in the world, and we will do it this year. That's a risk. What do you think happened? Instantaneously, I could have called it a failure. All the energy goes out of the room. Silence. They're probably dreaming, like, how do we get this gringo back on the next boat to New York City? But I say, just hang in there. You trust me, I trust you. Let's take it one day at a time. We trust each other. And I didn't leave a pumped up room. I didn't leave people elated and excited. I took that away. But one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, confidence builds. Things start to happen. Actions start to get taken. They go from 64 to 55 to 50 to 40 to 30. Now we're going around the corner into the finish of the year. They're in the top 10, top 5. We bypass the #1 and we win. We become the #1 in that year. So when I think about what Hasso Plattner did, in inventing SAP with the other founders and then reinventing it with HANA, this unbelievable generational sea change in database, and then rethinking ERP, S/4HANA. So you have a 21st century architecture to deal with the Internet of Things, mobility, the cloud, all the complexity of having to go from one industry and one business model to another, almost on the fly. I am excited, very excited about what that can do to change the public and the private sector, important industries like healthcare and others, to fundamentally help the world run better and improve people's lives. So at that time, we said, where's the world going? Mobile and the explosion of mobile was causing an unbelievable amount of data to be created. So data was doubling in the world every 18 months then. We knew that yesterday's disk-based database was a 20th century architecture that could not keep up with the explosion of data. We said we have to solve this problem. In there lies the ambition for SAP HANA, invented by the great Hasso Plattner, the founder of SAP. The second thing we said, we had to take the company to the cloud, because ease of consumption, beautiful user experience, radical simplification in helping people do their work better. So we go for the cloud. And then we also said, in a global economy, inter-enterprise computing, how companies collaborate with one another, with their trading partners, with their customers, is going to be huge. And when we sized that market, it was a 10 trillion market for business networks, and it was a 500 billion network for the cloud and the enterprise applications and the new data model I took you through. So we invented HANA. We refactored SAP ERP to S/4HANA, 21st century architecture. We went from 0 users in the cloud to 100 million, more than any other company in the enterprise, and we invented a new category called business network. All of that started in that original strategy meeting in 2010. But the most important learning is this. We had a vision to make the world run better, and then we said, no, help the world run better. Be humble and improve people's lives. So everything we do has to help the world run better and improve people's lives. So whether we were inventing something organically, we were doing large-scale M&A, we were inventing new categories, if it didn't take on that high standard, we didn't do it. So I would also advise people, don't live only by the paradigms of where you think opportunities are. Give yourself time to learn not only what a company does because it's got a brand that's consumer recognizable, but also get into the culture of companies. Get into, what am I going to learn? What am I going to receive in terms of training and preparing me for the best possible career I can have. So think long, even though I understand the world is not necessarily committing itself to you or you to some company for an eternity. But you got to think long view. But finally, be curious, you know. And when I say curious, I don't just mean like, let's, you know, have fun and roast marshmallows and think about ideas. I mean, like, be curious. If you're dealing with a CEO, it's like, look, what do you do? And how do you do your job? And what's on your mind? And what would somebody like me, if I was in your job, have to do to have a perfect day in the life of you? It's like, talk to everybody. Listen to everybody. Be open to everybody's story. You might be surprised. Occasionally you come up with an idea or two. And don't be afraid of anything. You know, the idea of staying in your own little world because that's where you're safe or that's where there's no risk, I just think it prevents you from taking advantage of so many interesting opportunities and so many interesting conversations. So be bold, be a winner, have dreams.
Yeah. So you talked a lot about forming a vision and committing to it, even if you don't know if you love it or not yet. My question for you is, what advice would you give for, say, a startup company or a small company when they're forming their vision, while they're dealing with competition and a lot of negative energy from competition?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you think about delicatessen, I had a lot of competition too. And the story I gave you in the beginning here was thinking about, the little one has to think about what the big one either chooses not to do or is structurally unable to do. So you can deliver something to the world that no one else can. And even if they can, and you're still willing to compete with them, you have to have a dimension of your product or your solution or your services that differentiates you. In fact, my prices were the highest, by far, because I couldn't buy in enough quantity to compete on price. And the first time I did a pricing scheme to lower price and use it as a loss leader, what do you think the competition did? What do you think? They lowered price even more. What do you think that did? It actually reinforced what I should have known before I made that mistake. There's another mistake, which is don't compete against the enemy's strengths. Go places that they either structurally can't, they choose not to. So I was lavish in customer service, and I knew that that was going to be my business model. And then I was going to segment the market based on that service, whether it was the senior citizens, the blue-collar workers, or the high school kids. It's not different today. Of course, it's a different size, it's a different scale. Now it's, how do I help you innovate your business model? How do I help you go into industries you didn't even know you should be in? But if you don't get in, 3 years from now when your competition does, you'll be an also-ran. How do we, rethink simplicity in the enterprise so you can execute, differently than everyone else? So at SAP, we have our way of doing that. At the deli, I had my way of doing that. But in both cases, you had to think about, what are your advantages? How do you differentiate against the competition? And basically, how do you win? And I think if you, give it that litmus test, nobody can deter you just because it's a competitive landmine. There's very few of them out there that aren't. There's always going to be competition. You got to look at competition as making you better. I'm on the board of one company in particular. When a board member says to that CEO, hey, you got this competitor that's doing this or the other competitor that's doing that, you know what he says? I can't listen. And people are like, why can't you listen? Because if I obsess on what they're doing, I won't invent what I should be doing to be different, better, completely connected to my consumer in ways they can't. That's why I go back to, it's all about the customer. I think we're ending kind of where we started. And your relationship and the depth and the intimacy that you can achieve, that's what beats your competition.
Well, I think the idea of managers not treating people with dignity and respect is completely unacceptable. So I don't suffer those types of managers well. On the other hand, I recognize that the other issue with management is, why are you calling yourself management? I was recently on a meeting where somebody said, they and somebody else in the meeting was at some level of management. And I'm sort of thinking to myself, why does that matter? I think what really matters is the customer and the role we play in helping them get what they want and achieve their ambitions and their dreams and their goals. And I think that the manager's role is in facilitating a process that is interdependent between various constituents to enable that to happen. And everything else is playing office. And I think the biggest problem with management is that they think that being 100% of emails and tying up people on the calendar to inspect what they're doing and to slow them down represents their idea of leadership. That kind of management boggles my mind and breaks my heart because it takes so much of the genuine ambition and the soul out of a company. So I don't appreciate counters and office players. We're looking for athletes that want to change the world. We had a team goal, but here was the idea behind what I think really changed things. Every single person had to have 3 goals that they truly believed in, that were important to them as a person, and I did not dictate them. Together we do this, but individually, what's important to you? We documented that. They were all different. It was surprising. One person might want to buy a house. Another person might want to pay for a child's education. Another person may want to get a new wardrobe. Another person may want to save some money. Who knows? Go to graduate school, but they wrote them all down. We had a bell, and every time somebody would hit one, the entire team came together and celebrated ringing that bell. And like high fives, hugs, but meant it, wanted it so badly for them. But here was the idea: discretionary effort. So the formula was simple. We will do this, you will do that, but each one of you has to give 10% of your time to the person that needs it the most. So what we did, if anyone was struggling, everyone got involved with that person. So instead of putting them on corrective action, breaking their confidence down, or firing them, we fired them up. We would spend an entire day in their territory with 18 people focused on what they needed. And what happened was they would learn so much, and we turned the situation around for them, and they began to believe in themselves, and they thought that they could win. And what was one of the great honors of my career at that time is the president of the United States Customer Operation was a guy by the name of Barry Rand, who is one of the great leaders of all time. I mean, he's the kind of guy, when you looked at him, you're like, I want to be like him. And that's pretty rare. Every single person on that team made the President's Club, which was very rare. It never happened before. What happened? Barry came to Hawaii to personally come to the table and congratulate every single person, because it had never been done before. So, I say to you, think about big picture goals, think about individual goals, celebrate those goals, and give discretionary effort from one person to another out of love and trust. There's just not enough love, and there's not enough trust. And when you have it, it changes everything.